Came back. Thank you, God. Thank you. I bet you many of you would probably say, I would not have expected that song on Easter morning. But you know how perfect it is, because we're going to talk about the mission of Jesus this morning. And certainly I think what Jesus saw was a wonderful, wonderful world. He looked through what was happening and understood what could happen, could be. And before I get in that, though, I did want to share a little story with you. A fellow by the name of Muldoon lived alone in an Irish countryside. But he had this dog that he loved and he cherished, and they became the best of buddies. And the dog was about 16 years old, and the dog passed away. And Muldoon, of course, was sad, so he went to his parish priest, and he said, Father, he said, I really want to do something really special for my dog, and could you do a mass, a celebration for the life of my dog? And the parish priest said, well, Muldoon, I understand how you're hurting, but you know what? We don't do that here. We don't bless animals in this parish. He said, but you know, there are some Unity churches down the road. And I don't know what they believe, but they may be willing to do that. Muldoon looked at the priest and he said, do you think $5,000 would be enough of a donation to thank them for what they're doing? The priest looked at him and said, oh my gosh, man, why didn't you tell me your dog was Catholic? I told you to come back last week, there'd be a better joke. And yeah, okay. So anyway, so let's talk about this idea of the mission statement of Jesus. What we find is, and many authorities agree, in Luke 4, the 18th and 19th verses, which is a part of the Sermon on the Mount from Luke's perspective, not the Matthew Sermon on the Mount, which most of us are really familiar with. There is a statement that Jesus makes, which is really a mission statement. And he says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives, and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. So Jesus' message was good news to the poor, freedom for prisoners, recovery of sight to the blind, relief to the oppressed, and the year of the Lord's favor. But what did he mean about this, okay? And some people have taken that literally, and it's not a bad thing to take literally. But I think there's more to it than just a little translation. I think Jesus had a bigger picture in mind. And you know, he spoke in parables, he spoke with precepts, he spoke with metaphors. And I think in this case, he really is talking about something deeper than just the words that he used. And the people he was talking to understood this because they understood the language of that day and time. You see the word poor, for example. Well, let me get to that in a minute. Okay, I'm ahead of myself. Anyway, the first thing he started off with is, and in some interpretations of the Bible, it says, the Spirit of the Lord is within me. And certainly we believe that to be true, not only within Jesus, but within each and every one of us. And so the Spirit of the Lord is within me simply means that Jesus went within to find his mission, not outside of himself. I think Jesus really understood his mission before he was baptized. I think he understood it when he went into the wilderness. You know, when he went into the wilderness, he said, now, let me think about this. What's the best way that I can really do the work I'm supposed to do? And one of the first thoughts that probably came to him, or did, they say, is what I'll do is I'll turn all the stones into bread. And if I do that, all the poor, everybody will be fed and everything's going to be fine. And Jesus said, you know, that might be wonderful. That's not what I'm here for. That's more of a portrayal of the Messiah of history. And then he said, well, to himself, you know, I could really get people to follow me. I could become that messianic leader by jumping off of the temple and slowly floating down to earth. I could perform a miracle of that nature and everybody would follow me. Now, I don't know if Jesus could have done that or not. But what he said to himself is, nope, that's not going to do any good. It's going to impress a few people for a while, but it's not really going to make a change. It's not going to transform lives. And so anyway, Jesus had a few more thoughts, and he finally said, Satan, get thee behind me. And what he was saying was, ego, get thee behind me. I got a bigger job to do. I've got a mission that's greater than any of these things. And so when he said the Spirit of the Lord was within him, he was saying, I am listening, I am discerning, I am being guided, what he called the Father. And then he said, to proclaim the good news to the poor. Now I want to talk about the word poor. If you go into Greek, if you go into Aramaic, you find that the word poor has several different definitions. The word that Jesus used, both in this particular verbiage and in Matthew, which was, blessed are the poor in spirit, for they will inherit the kingdom of God, means poor in spirit. It doesn't mean people who are destitute, doesn't mean people who are broke, doesn't mean people who are without. It means poor in spirit, which means that they were not aware of the power within themselves. They were not aware that they really were spiritual beings and able to have a spiritual experience in this human plane, in this human condition. They were ignorant of that. Because, Jesus was so far ahead of his years, we know that because we're still trying to catch up with him. And so what he was really saying is those who are poor in spirit, those who don't understand, those who need to have a closer, walking, day-to-day, moment-by-moment relationship with who they are and what they are, which is divine mind, divine idea, and divine expression. Jesus understood that he was a divine expression. And he wanted each of us to understand that. So to proclaim the good news to the poor of spirit. To proclaim liberty to the captives. There was no evidence that Jesus went out and talked to other warring tribes who had maybe had Israelis as captives and got them to be free. There's no information he even thought about that. There's no idea that Jesus ever visited the prisons. What we know, I think, is that Jesus was talking about those who are captivated by their ego. Those who are caught up by living their lives not inside out, but outside in. And that's all about ego. You see, the ego teaches us that we are in a dualistic world, that there is the good and there is the bad, that there is the right and there is the wrong, that there is the truth as I see it and nobody else understands the truth. That's what the ego says to us. It's a way of living that we don't really understand that relationships are so important, and that when we really relate to each other, we can grow. When we really relate to each other, we can learn from each other. When we really relate to each other, we understand that that other person is our teacher. I think that's what Jesus was trying to teach his disciples. And that was his message. That we don't have to be captivated by the ego. That when we let go of the ego, when we relax into spirit, what happens is we have a clearer mind of how to overcome any issues that are challenging us. That we have a much clearer mind on how to be quiet and be still and look within ourselves for the answer. And then be guided by that answer. To take the first step and the second step and the next step after that. So that we grow, we transform our lives, and we transform the lives of others. We transform Mother Earth herself. And just understand this, the ego always stands for separation. It stands for judgment. It stands for anger. It does not stand for love, unconditional love. Matter of fact, the ego says there's only circumstantial love. And I can't trust love as much as I can trust pain, interesting enough. Because I've only experienced love for a while and then it seems to go away. And yet the truth is that unconditional love looks through the stuff, looks through the challenges, looks through any issues in the relationship, and says yes to who that other person is and what they are becoming. And that means that we then evolve and become even stronger and better. So we're no longer captivated. In Emily Cady's book, Lessons in Truth, there is the first chapter, From Bondage to Freedom. From bondage to freedom. And what she says is that when we start to understand God in a different way than we've been taught, when we start to understand ourselves, our levels of consciousness, when we start to understand the power we have within ourselves to direct our faith, to direct our thinking, to open our minds and open our hearts, it's then that we're no longer a captive and we are totally free. I know that each and every one of us always wants to be free. Then he said, to recover the sight of the blind. You know, when Jesus healed the blind folks, what he would say to them when he do a miracle with somebody, he would say, now I want you to, he didn't say, it says in Scripture a lot of times, now go and behave yourself, okay? All right? What he really said in Aramaic was, go and be yourself. Be that spiritual person. Be that person of faith. Be that person who loves others. It's through your own love that you are healed. And it's true for us. It's through our own love that we are healed. Jesus was not talking about the blind physically. More often than not, Jesus was talking about seeing life fully. Carl Brough, who is a minister and a psychologist, said this: it may be that we're not seeing the wonder in life because all we're doing is wondering how we're going to survive life. Powerful statement. And true sometimes. I get caught up in the struggle and I can't see the future. I get caught up in the struggle and I don't even have hope. I get caught up in the struggle and I lose faith. I get caught up in the struggle and I think everybody else is to blame. And so when I'm caught up in the struggle, my ego, again, gets in the way of the solution. The solution is within you as you stand and turn to the Christ within, to the I am, to what we call God, and allow that to be your guiding system, your GPS, if you would. The third thing Jesus, or the next thing Jesus said was to set up liberty to the oppressed. To offer liberty to the oppressed. He was talking about the socially oppressed, those who are marginalized. He was talking about those people who don't have that opportunity, and those with opportunity think they ought to take advantage of the opportunity that those with opportunity already have. Does that make sense? Must not. If I expect somebody to act like me so that they can become more fulfilled and they can enjoy life better, am I ever making a mistake? Right? That's what I'm talking about. We all have had different experiences, different ways to see life, different ways that we're raised. And sometimes those are oppressive. And so the message is to go within oneself. And if you have the power to have the ability to stand up for those who are oppressed, to make a difference, don't sit on the sideline. He said also oppressed by a destructive lifestyle. Now, a lot of folks here, including myself, understand that one. That we have struggled at times in our lives. We have felt oppressed at times in our lives. And so what we've done is, before we learn not to do this, we look outside of ourselves and we say, oh, the world can help me. And we find out that the world cannot help us. The answers are not the correct answers. The answers are not as powerful as when I go within myself and find the answers within myself. Looking outside of ourselves leads to addiction. Looking outside of ourselves leads to frustration. Looking outside of ourselves leads to a life that is confusing and says, I'm not sure I can make it. I don't even know if I want to. So what we learn to do, what just about all of you, I'm sure, have learned to do, is look inside yourself and see the potential that you are and what you can become and how you can overcome any challenge that happens to be in your life. We've all been through our life's challenge. Most of the time it's because we looked outside of ourselves and thought what was out there was our mission, not inside of ourselves, and felt this is really my mission and being called into something. And oppressed by difficult life experiences. We all have that. We feel oppressed when life is difficult sometimes. But we can choose to say, life is really good. It's not difficult. I'm just making it difficult. Just in the moment, I'm making it difficult, but I can make it great. I can make it more powerful. I can make it unlimited in potential. If I'm willing to go from the inside out. If I'm willing to say, life's difficulties are okay. They're learning experiences. That's why we have relationships. In every relationship, there is the positive and what we might call the negative. But the negative is only that opportunity to grow and understand oneself and say yes to the higher self within. That's what the relationship's all about. Last night, I was at Ann Bussick's wedding, and I met her aunt and uncle, and they shared with me that Ann came from a Jewish background, but that her father changed that over time, and that they were Jewish. And so they just wanted to know what unity was all about. And, we had an hour before we were going to eat, so I thought, well, I might as well tell them. No, we shared. They were trying. The first question to everybody is, what's the difference between unity and Unitarian? Okay, and I went through that whole process. And then we talked about that. And I made I said, we're closer to Judaism than we are Christianity at times. We understand that Jesus was Jewish. He never called himself a Christian. But what we're really here to do is have those relationships, we believe, that help us grow and help us make a difference in the world. And he said, oh my goodness, and his eyes lit up. He said, that's what I'm trying to do. So he gave me a website. He asked me to call him. And he has a program he's working on, which is kind of like Pay It Forward. And he has a number of people enrolled in it, a number of faith traditions enrolled in it. I'd never heard of it. And so this afternoon, after I take my nap, I will look that up, okay? But isn't it cool the way relationships can come together in the most unusual ways? They were from Chicago, by the way. What's the probability I would run into them? But yet I think it was meant to be. I think all relationships, those or to only last for a minute, are meant to be. And then Jesus said an interesting thing. He says, and I'm here to proclaim the year of the Lord. Now, in Leviticus 25, it says, here is the year of the Lord. Every 50 years, all property was to go back to the original owner. All debts were to be canceled, and all prisoners or slaves were to be released. They talked about that, but nobody has recorded in history where they did it, okay? Where they celebrated the year of the Lord. And so the year of the Lord kind of became what the Messiah would do when the Messiah came. And really what it was saying is that what we want is a picture of release, of forgiveness, and restoration. Don't we all want that? We want today for our world, our family, our community, our movement. We want to feel that we can release ourselves and live a different way and see a world that treats each other with dignity and respect, with honor. That we can release the good within ourselves, the spirit within ourselves, and connect together. We also have the idea, I believe, that forgiveness is part of that process. And I would say that the real forgiveness is to forgive yourself. for anything that you think you've done wrong. We all make mistakes. We all have been given information that might not be for our highest good, but we think it is in a moment. We all have perceptions of something that's happened in the past. And if all of us together saw that happen, every one of us would have a different perception. So we have a perception of something happened in the past. We have it in our mind. And what we need to do is release that, and we do it through the power of forgiveness. Just let it go. That's all forgiveness means. Let it go. And as we let it go, we're able then to step into restoration, to be restored. And you know, in unity, we don't think you're really being restored. What you're doing is waking up to who you are. You're becoming aware of who you truly are and your power and who you can be and what you can do in the world. You become aware to the point that you create a mission for yourself. Most individuals I talk to do not have a mission statement. But Jesus did. I do. A lot of people do today. But they can tell me their mission statement at work. You see, we each need our own mission statement. So one of the challenges I would say is to go into restoration, to be born again, to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The way we do that is through this power of forgiveness, through this power of seeing the world differently, of changing what we see or our perception of it. And then starting to see what we believe. To see what we believe. So if I believe this world's coming apart, it seems, then that's what I'm going to see. If I believe that this world actually is just going through a state of being whereby we are evolving and we're moving into that place, into what is called the omega point, where everybody lives in harmony, then that's what I will see eventually. And part of it I'll already see in my life. The story of Easter for each of us is that the stone has been rolled away. That you and I have the freedom to step out of the tomb of life into the beauty of life. We come out of the darkness and into the sunshine. And as we do that, we understand the power of a transformed mind. We understand the power of transforming our lives. And we understand what a wonderful world it is. God bless you.